Good morning to all. I am Sonakshi Majumdar. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I am going to teach you class 6th SST History. Chapter 8, Ashoka, the emperor who gave up war. So let's start the chapter. A very big kingdom means an empire. There is a long history about the lions that we see on our notes and coins. They were carved in stone and placed on top of a massive stone pillar at Sarnath. Ashoka was one of the greatest rulers known to history. Many inscriptions were carved on pillars as well as on rock surface on his instructions. Before we find out what was written in these inscriptions, let us see why his kingdom was called an empire. The empire that Ashoka ruled was founded by his grandfather Chandragupta Maurya more than 2300 years ago. Chandragupta was supported by a wise man named Chanakya or Kautilya. Several of Chanakya's ideas were written down in a book called the Arthashastra. There were many cities in the empire. These are marked with black dots on the map. This included the capital Patliputra, Takshila, and Ujjain. Takshila was a gateway to the northwest, including Central Asia, while Ujjain lay on the route from north to south India. Probably merchants, officials, and craft persons lived in the cities. In other regions, there were villages of farmers and herders. In some regions, some such as central India, there were forests where forest produce were gathered and animals were hunted by the people for their food. Different languages were spoken in different parts of the empire. They probably ate different kinds of food and wore different kinds of clothes as well. How are empires different from kingdoms? More resources are needed by the emperors than kings because empires are larger than kingdoms and need to be protected by big armies. So, also, they require a larger number of officials who collect taxes. Ruling the empire. Different parts of the empire were ruled differently. It was due to the vastness of the empire. The area around Patliputra was under the direct control of the emperor. This meant that officials were appointed to collect taxes from farmers, herders, craft persons, and traders who lived in villages and towns in the area. Officials were also given the power to punish those who disobeyed the orders of the ruler. Several of these officials were given salaries. Messengers went to and fro, and spies were appointed to keep a watch on the officials. The emperor supervised them all with the help of members of the royal family and senior ministers. There were other areas or provinces. Each of these provinces was ruled from a provincial capital such as Takshila or Ujjain. To keep some amount of control from Patliputra, royal princes were often appointed as governors of these provinces. Local customs and rules were probably followed. Besides, there were vast areas between these centers. Here, the Mauryas tried to keep control on roads and rivers, which were very important for transport, and to collect whatever sources were available as tax and tribute. For instance, the Earth Shastra tells us that the northwest was important for blankets while South India was important for its gold and precious stones. It is possible that these sources were collected as tribute. There were also the forested regions. People who lived in these areas were more or less independent. However, they may have been expected to provide elephants, timber, honey, and wax to Mauryan officials of the Maurya dynasty. Dynasty means when members of the same family become rulers one after another, the family is normally called a dynasty. The Mauryas were a dynasty with three important rulers: Chandragupta, his son Bindusar, and Bindusar's son Ashoka. Ashoka, a unique ruler. Ashoka was the most famous of the Maurya dynasty. He was the first ruler who tried to take his message to the people through inscriptions. Most of his inscriptions were in Prakrit language and were written in the Brahmin script. Ashoka's war in Kalinga. Kalinga is the ancient name of coastal Orissa. You can see in the map 5 given on page 60. Ashoka fought a war to conquer Kalinga. However, he was so horrified when he saw the violence and bloodshed in the battlefield that he decided not to fight any more wars. He is the only king in the history of the world who gave up conquest after winning a war. What was Ashoka's Dhamma? Dhamma means Dharma. Dhamma of Ashoka did not involve worship of a god or performance of a sacrifice. He felt that just as a father tries to teach his children, he too had a duty to instruct his subjects. He was greatly inspired by the teachings of the Buddha. There were a number of problems that troubled Ashoka. Different religions were followed by people in different parts of his empire, and this sometimes led to conflict. Animals were sacrificed, slaves and servants were treated badly. Besides, quarrels were taking place in families and amongst neighbors. Ashoka felt it was his duty to solve these problems. So he appointed officials who were known as Dhamma Mahamatta. These officials went from place to place to teach people about Dhamma, means Dharma. They are gurus. Okay, they went place to place to teach people about Dharma. Ashoka also got his message inscribed on rocks and pillars and instructed his officials to read his message for those who were unable to read it themselves. To spread ideas about Dhamma, Ashoka also sent messengers to other lands such as Syria, Egypt, Greece, and Sri Lanka. He constructed roads, dug wells, and built rest houses. Besides, he arranged for medical treatment for both human beings and animals. Ashoka's message to his subjects. People perform a variety of rituals when they fall ill, when their children get married, when children are born, or when they go on a journey. These rituals are not useful. If instead people observe other practices, this would be more fruitful. What are these other practices? They are being gentle with slaves and servants, respecting one's elders, treating all creatures with compassion, giving gifts to Brahmins and monks. It is both wrong to praise one's own religion and criticize another's. Each one should respect the other's religion. If one praises one's own religion while criticizing another's, one is actually doing greater harm to one's own religion. Therefore, One should try to understand the main ideas of another religion and respect it. So these are some message of Ashoka's which were also inscribed on the pillars. So students, that's all for today. This chapter is completed. Your homework is to read the chapter. Do book reading of this chapter. I will send you the PDF. Complete your notes, write in good handwriting in your history notebook. Okay? Thank you.